My beloved child, something shifted in silence before anyone even spoke. And that is why this moment feels different from all the others you have tried to understand. It is not something loud or obvious, but something subtle that changes everything from within. There are conversations happening around your name that you never expected. Words being exchanged quietly, without your awareness, yet still reaching places that matter. And one of those conversations has touched a heart more deeply than you realize. It did not happen in a dramatic way. It happened in a normal moment, in an ordinary setting, but the impact was far from ordinary. A friend sat beside your person and revealed something about your past that carried more weight than anyone imagined. It was not said to create conflict or confusion. It was simply mentioned, almost casually, but the meaning behind it was much stronger than the tone it was spoken in. Nothing about it was loud, nothing about it was forced. Yet it reached straight into the hidden place where emotions are hardest to hide. At first, your person did not react. They stayed still, listening quietly, almost pretending that the words meant nothing to them. Their expression did not change, and to anyone watching, it would have seemed like nothing had happened at all. But inside, every sentence was landing with unusual force, as if each word was finding a place it was meant to unlock. What they heard was not just information. It was a truth that suddenly connected pieces they had never fully understood before. The way you carried yourself, the pauses in your voice, the strength you show even when no one notices. All of those things began to take on a new meaning. Things that once seemed unclear or confusing were slowly becoming understandable in a different light. Do not skip this moment because something important is unfolding in ways that cannot be seen on the surface. What happened next was unexpected even for them. The room stayed ordinary, nothing around them changed, but inside their thoughts, everything shifted at once. It was as if a quiet door had opened in their mind without permission. They began replaying memories of you, the way you spoke in certain moments, the way you paused before answering sometimes, the way you smiled while hiding what you truly felt. At the time, these moments seemed small, almost forgettable. But now they were returning with meaning, one after another, building into something much bigger than before. That truth about your past opened a door they had never entered before. And behind that door, they did not just see facts or events. They saw a version of you that felt deeper, stronger, and far more unforgettable than they had ever realized. It was not a different you, but a more complete understanding of who you have always been. A strange silence followed after the friend finished speaking. Your person looked away for a moment, as if creating distance would help them process what they had just heard. But distance did not help. The truth stayed close, repeating itself again and again in their mind, refusing to fade or become smaller. Suddenly, they understood that many things they once misunderstood about you were never weakness, never confusion, and never emotional distance. They were signs of a story you carried quietly. A story you did not explain to everyone. A story you did not always show, even when it was heavy. There was a moment when they almost asked another question, but they stopped themselves. Not because they did not want answers, but because they were already feeling too much. Sometimes a single truth creates more emotion than many explanations ever could. And this was exactly one of those moments. Their heart became heavy, not only with sadness, but with realization. A different kind of understanding was forming, one that cannot be undone once it arrives. They remembered something very specific, a small detail from a previous conversation with you. At the time, it seemed ordinary and unimportant, but now it returned with surprising force. A phrase you once said, a hesitation in your voice, a look that lasted only a few seconds longer than usual. Those small details, once forgotten, suddenly became meaningful. The friend's words had changed their meaning completely. What once felt simple now felt layered with emotion and hidden depth. What your person felt next surprised even them. It was not only concern, it was not only regret. It was something quieter, but stronger. A growing emotional pull they could not explain. Because once someone understands the hidden chapter behind another person's strength, admiration often becomes deeper than before. Do not skip because something important is still unfolding. They began wondering how much you had endured without speaking fully about it. They wondered how often you smiled while carrying memories no one else could see. And the more they wondered, the more emotional they became without even trying to control it. For a moment, they stayed quiet, because they feared saying the wrong thing. Some truths create silence before they create words. This was one of those truths. Their friend noticed the change immediately and asked softly if they were okay. But your person only nodded slightly, because they did not know how to explain what was happening inside them. They were seeing you differently now, not as someone they simply knew in passing moments, but as someone whose story had more depth than they had ever imagined. That realization stayed with them. It did not fade after the conversation ended. It continued long after, like a thought that refuses to leave. Something rare happens when hidden truth meets genuine feeling. The heart becomes honest without permission. And that honesty was beginning to rise inside them. They were no longer protecting themselves from emotion the same way they did before. Instead, they were beginning to feel it fully, without resistance. Stay till the end, because one thought kept repeating in their mind. If this truth had been known earlier, many things might have unfolded differently. That single thought carried weight on its own. It stayed longer than expected, repeating quietly in the background of every other thought they tried to have. While no one else noticed, their expression changed slightly. Their eyes softened. Their voice became quieter. Their entire presence shifted in a way that could not easily be explained. Because sometimes, emotion does not arrive like a storm. It arrives like a slow realization that settles in and refuses to leave. What they heard about your past did not push them away. It pulled them closer inside their thoughts, closer than before, closer than they expected. And this was only the beginning, because what they do with these feelings next has not fully unfolded yet. What happened after that silence was even more powerful than the first reaction. They did not leave that conversation unchanged. They carried every word with them long after the friend stopped speaking. And while everything around them looked normal, inside their mind, something had already begun to move in a new direction. They tried to act calm, but the truth they had just heard kept returning with greater force. One sentence in particular refused to leave their mind, because it explained something they had questioned about you for a very long time. Suddenly, separate memories began to connect one after another, forming a clearer picture than ever before. Your person became unusually quiet again, not because they had nothing to say, but because too many thoughts arrived at once. They remembered times when you stayed composed while others would have broken down. They remembered moments when your voice stayed steady, even when there was hidden weight behind it. Now those memories felt completely different. They were no longer just past moments. They were signs of strength they had not fully understood at the time. There was a pause where they looked away again, needing a private moment even in a public space, as if their thoughts required space to breathe. The friend noticed this reaction and added one more detail, something small but powerful enough to shift the emotional atmosphere even further. That detail changed the way your person breathed. It was subtle, almost unnoticeable, but it mattered more than it seemed. Stay till the end, because this next realization touched them deeply. They began to understand that much of what you never explained had meaning they failed to see before. And when understanding arrives late, emotion often arrives stronger than expected. They began questioning themselves. Why did they not look deeper before? Why did certain moments now feel more meaningful than they did at the time? Why did your words echo differently now that they understood more of your story? These questions did not have easy answers. The truth about your past had not simply informed them. It had awakened something inside them that they could no longer ignore. A feeling that was not fully formed before now had direction. It had weight. It had presence. And it stayed with them longer than anything else that day. They even wondered whether you ever felt alone while carrying everything you carried. That thought lingered in their mind, refusing to fade. It was not easy for them to move past it, because once it appeared, it changed how they saw everything that came before. For the first time in a while, they felt an emotional pull that had no defense around it. Nothing they normally relied on seemed to work anymore. No distraction helped. No quick change of topic could pull their mind away from it. Even after the conversation ended, your name stayed in their thoughts with an unusual intensity that they could not explain or ignore. They kept replaying one old moment in their mind. It was a simple memory where you had smiled at something small, something ordinary. But now that smile felt completely different to them. It felt stronger, quieter, and almost brave in a way they had never understood before. It was strange how one truth can completely change the way every memory is seen. That is exactly what happened to them. Everything they thought they understood began to shift. Do not skip this. Stay until the end, because something important is unfolding. Later, when they were alone, the silence around them returned. But this time, it did not feel empty. It felt heavier, more personal. Without anyone watching or speaking to them, they finally admitted to themselves that hearing that truth had affected them more than they expected. There was no dramatic reaction, no visible change on the outside. But inside, something deep had moved, and it kept growing quietly without stopping. They started to realize that your story carries a kind of strength that most people would never notice at first glance. And strangely, this realization did not weaken their connection to you. It made it stronger. A once-in-a-lifetime kind of understanding slowly began forming inside them. It was as if the version of you they thought they knew was only the surface, and there were still deeper layers hidden underneath everything they had seen. That discovery brought both tenderness and reflection. They began questioning whether they had judged certain moments too quickly in the past. Some memories now felt incomplete, like they needed to be revisited and understood again from the beginning with new awareness. It was not just curiosity anymore, it was emotional realization. Stay until the end, because another truth is coming. Now they were looking at everything connected to you through a completely different emotional lens. Not because someone forced them to, but because what they learned opened a door inside them that could not easily close again. And before this feeling could settle, another realization began to rise slowly in their mind. It was not fully spoken, not fully formed, but it was getting stronger with every quiet moment. Later than expected, another moment came that they could not ignore. The truth they heard earlier did not fade with time. Instead, it became even stronger when they were finally alone with their own thoughts. Sometimes, emotions do not fully appear in front of others. They only become real when silence gives them space to grow. And that is exactly what happened here. The room around them was quiet, but their mind was not. Every word from that earlier conversation kept returning, clearer than before, almost as if it was happening again in real time. But this time, the emotional weight was heavier, because there was nothing left to distract them from what they now understood about you. Do not skip, because something significant is waiting for you. One memory rose above all the others. It was a moment when you stayed calm, even though something around you was clearly difficult. At the time, they only noticed it briefly. It did not seem important then. But now, after hearing the truth, that same memory returned with new meaning. It felt larger, deeper, and more significant than before. They realized that what once looked simple on the surface had actually been holding hidden depth all along. That realization made them pause completely. They stopped what they were doing without even thinking about it. They were not confused. They were just finally beginning to understand something they had missed earlier. There are moments when truth arrives late, but still changes everything. This became one of those moments. Stay until the end, because another powerful thought was beginning to form inside them. They started wondering how many things you never said out loud because you chose strength over explanation. That thought stayed with them. It did not leave quickly. In fact, it became stronger the more they sat with it. They remembered how you once changed the subject when something personal came too close to being revealed. At that time, it seemed normal, but now it felt meaningful. Suddenly they understood that even your silence had been communicating something all along, even if no one was paying attention closely enough to notice it. And what affected them most was not just the truth itself, but the realization of how gracefully you carried your past without asking anyone to feel sorry for you. That quiet strength moved something deep inside them. For a while they tried to distract themselves, but nothing worked. Every distraction failed in the same way. Your presence in their thoughts had become too strong. The emotional weight was not loud or dramatic, but it was steady and impossible to ignore. It kept growing in calm but powerful waves. Do not skip this. Stay until the end. Something important is still unfolding. Then came a surprising realization. They started to feel respect rising where confusion once existed. And with that respect came something even deeper, a kind of tenderness they did not expect to feel so strongly. They began to see your past not as something distant or unrelated, but as something that shaped who you are today. Every strong quality they admired in you suddenly seemed to have roots they had never fully understood before. It was as if everything made more sense now, but in a way that also made them more emotional than before. One sentence from a friend kept returning to their mind again and again, and each time it returned, it felt more powerful than the last. Not because the words had changed, but because now they were being understood through emotion instead of just thought. They started wondering if you even realize how much your quiet resilience speaks without you saying much at all. They also wondered if anyone has truly recognized what you have carried without asking for recognition. That question alone changed their entire emotional state. Stay until the end, because another shift happened inside them. They began feeling a quiet need to protect what they now understood about you. Not in an obvious way, not in a dramatic way, but deeply, in a way that came naturally without effort or decision. A once-in-a-lifetime kind of emotional clarity was forming. It became impossible for them to look at your story casually anymore. It was no longer just information to them. It had become personal. And before they could express anything, before they could react outwardly, one final thought kept building inside them slowly. Maybe the truth about your past has only just begun to awaken what they truly feel now. There came a point where they could no longer keep these feelings in the background. The truth they learned had reached a place where even silence felt full of emotion. What began as quiet reflection was now turning into something more serious, more personal, and harder to ignore. They found themselves asking the same question repeatedly. How did you stay so steady while carrying experiences that could have changed anyone completely? That question was not just curiosity. It came from emotional impact. The more they thought about it, the more they realized your strength was always visible, but its meaning had stayed hidden until now. Do not skip because something important is unfolding. Then, unexpectedly, during an ordinary moment, the next shift happened. They heard your name again in another conversation. Instantly, their attention changed. What once might have felt casual now felt meaningful. Even hearing your name carried emotional weight because everything they now knew was connected to it. They remembered a specific detail from your past that had been mentioned before, but this time it hit differently. It was not just the truth itself, but the way it explained your patience, your calm reactions, and even your distance at certain moments. What once looked like mystery now looked like quiet endurance. Stay until the end, because this realization created something rare inside them. They started to feel like they had underestimated the depth behind your silence. And once someone truly sees depth, they cannot go back to only seeing the surface. Something important was forming in their mind. For the first time, they began imagining what your hardest days might have felt like, when no one truly understood what you were carrying. That imagination created a softness in them that they could not control. It was not pity. It was respect mixed with emotion. Maybe your strongest qualities were born from chapters you never fully explained. That thought changed the way they saw your entire presence in their life. It changed everything. Stay until the end. Another memory returned, a moment where you stayed kind, even when most people would have withdrawn completely. At the time, they noticed it, but now they understood it. And understanding made that memory stay with them in a much deeper way than before. They slowly became aware that everything calm about you had a deeper story attached to it. Even your pauses started to feel meaningful now, as if they were never empty at all, but full of things that were never said out loud. For a while they said nothing to anyone, but inside their mind they were already accepting something important. The truth about your past did not weaken their emotional connection. It actually made it stronger. It changed the way they saw you in a quiet but permanent way. That honesty surprised them because they were not prepared for such a deep reaction. They thought they would hear something and move on, but instead it stayed with them. They began to understand something simple but powerful. Some people speak loudly so they can be understood. They try to explain themselves again and again, hoping someone will finally get them. But there are other people who carry their truth quietly. Their life is not loud, but it is deep. And only later, sometimes much later, do others finally understand their real value. In their mind, you now belong to that second kind of person. Stay until the end, because what followed was another strong shift in how they saw you. They started thinking that your quiet strength deserves more recognition than it has ever received. That thought did not leave them. It stayed with them through the day, through silence, and through every normal distraction that usually takes attention away. But this time, nothing worked the same way. Even simple moments could not erase what they had realized. There was a kind of emotional clarity growing inside them. It did not arrive all at once. It built slowly, moment by moment. Admiration and reflection started mixing together in a way they could not separate anymore. Your story was no longer something far away or unrelated to them. It became something they felt personally connected to, something that had emotional weight in their mind. And now, without saying it out loud yet, they were moving closer to a realization that could change how they respond to you completely. What they feel is no longer just a passing emotion. It is becoming something steady, something that does not leave easily. What started as a reaction has now turned into a quiet turning point inside them. The truth they heard about your past stayed longer than they expected. Instead of fading like most conversations do, it kept returning. And each time it came back, it felt a little stronger. Some truths do not disappear after they are heard once. They settle inside a person and slowly begin to change how they see everything. Now they are noticing things they did not pay attention to before. The way you respond gently, even when life feels heavy. The way you stay thoughtful, even when others do not fully understand you. These small details are no longer small to them. They feel meaningful now. They are connecting these observations with everything they learned, and that connection is creating a deeper emotional shift. Do not skip, because something important is developing here. A moment came when they suddenly realized they had been replaying your voice in their mind without even trying. It was not intentional. It just happened naturally. Certain things you once said now feel different to them because they finally understand the feeling behind those words. They can sense a hidden strength that was always there, but never fully noticed before. That understanding has created a kind of respect that is difficult for them to explain. It is not based on one conversation or one moment. It is based on a pattern they now see clearly. Every small memory has started to connect into one bigger picture. And in that picture, you appear stronger and more layered than they ever realized. They are beginning to understand that your past did not weaken you. It shaped you. It created a kind of emotional strength that many people never develop because they never go through what you went through in the same way. This realization is changing how they interpret everything about you. Stay until the end, because another unexpected thought appeared in their mind. They started wondering how often you had to stay strong when nobody around you knew the full story. That thought affected them more than they expected. It made them see your experiences in a deeper way, and it made them realize how much you may have carried without asking anyone to notice. Something significant is happening inside them now, because their emotions are no longer easy to ignore. Even when they try to focus on other things, the thought of you returns. And every time it returns, it brings more clarity, more reflection, and more emotional depth. They remembered a moment when you smiled during a difficult conversation. At that time, it seemed like a simple reaction, nothing special. But now that memory feels different. It feels meaningful in a way they did not understand before. That smile now looks like something deeper, something that held more than what was visible on the surface. They now understand that some smiles carry hidden stories. Some people smile not because everything is easy, but because they are trying to stay steady while something difficult is happening inside them. This realization changed how they see your presence completely. It made your emotional world feel more real and more significant in their heart. Do not skip. Stay until the end. Something important is still unfolding. What changed most is that they are no longer separating your past from who you are today. They are seeing the connection between everything. Every experience, every quiet moment, every hidden chapter has become part of the person they cannot stop thinking about. It is all forming one complete picture in their mind now. A deeper emotional understanding has started forming inside them. It is not loud, it is quiet, but it is strong. Admiration is no longer something they keep inside without expression. Even if they have not said it fully, they are feeling it clearly and consistently. At the same time, a quiet sense of regret is starting to grow inside them. Not regret because they did something wrong, but regret because they did not understand sooner. They are realizing that timing changes everything. Sometimes people only recognize depth after they finally hear the truth, even if it comes later than it should. Now even ordinary memories connected to you feel different. A message that once seemed normal now feels meaningful. A small phrase you said before now carries more emotional weight. Even silence they once overlooked now feels like part of something bigger. Their mind is reinterpreting everything through this new understanding. Stay until the end, because one final realization is forming inside them. Your story has awakened something sincere in them, something deeper than a passing feeling, something that cannot easily be reversed or ignored. It has changed the way they process every memory connected to you.